Okay, let's dive right in. When we talk about the Constitution of India, we're not just looking at some dry legal document. What we're really exploring is this grand ongoing experiment in how you govern a country, specifically one of the most diverse nations on Earth. It's a fascinating story, and it's all about one thing: balance.
So, just to give you a sense of the sheer scale of this experiment, check out this number. The Indian Constitution has roughly 145,000 words. That makes it the longest written national constitutions in the entire world. And it's not just long for the sake of being long. It's incredibly detailed, trying to map out a path for a new republic and all the challenges it was about to face.
And that really brings us to the core question, doesn't it? I mean, how on earth do you create a single, coherent rulebook for a nation with countless languages, religions, and cultures, all at the very moment it's being born? This was the absolutely monumental challenge its creators were up against. Right after independence in 1947, India's Constituent Assembly, a body of elected representatives, took on this massive job. Their goal was to forge a document that could guide the nation's future, one that could somehow guarantee both unity and liberty. No small task. And this journey, well, it took nearly 3 years. You can see from the timeline here, the assembly actually started its work before independence, right in the middle of the incredibly turbulent period of partition. The Constitution was formally adopted in late 1949 and then came into full effect on January 26, 1950, a day now celebrated, of course, as India's Republic Day. So the rulebook is written, but what does it actually do? How did it design the day-to-day machinery of government? Let's take a look at how India is supposed to work when things are, normal. At its core, you've got a structure that might look pretty familiar: the separation of powers. You have the legislature, that's parliament. Their job is to make the laws. Then there's the executive, led by the prime minister, who implements those laws. And finally, the judiciary, with a Supreme Court at the top, to interpret the laws. It's a classic system of checks and balances.
Now, here's where things get really unique. India isn't purely federal like the US, and it's not purely unitary like the UK. It's the special hybrid, what experts call quasi-federal. So yeah, states have their own powers, but the central government has a lot of strength. You see it in things like a single unified constitution and the center's power to appoint state governors. This was a super deliberate choice to keep this incredibly diverse country held together. But a constitution is so much more than just a blueprint for government. It's also a promise to its people, a set of guarantees that defines the whole relationship between every single citizen and the state. And you can feel the heart of that promise right here in the preamble, the Constitution's powerful opening statement. Just look at the goals it sets out: justice, liberty, equality. These aren't just aspirational words on a page. They are the guiding principles for the entire document. They're the very soul of the Republic. And these incredible principles are given real legal teeth in Part 3 of the Constitution. This is where the fundamental rights are laid out, and these are not just suggestions. They are legally enforceable protections that form the absolute bedrock of Indian democracy. They are the lines the state simply cannot cross. Okay, so we've got the day-to-day government, and we've got the people's guarantees. But what happens when the nation faces a truly grave crisis? Well, the framers, they were deeply aware of the potential for chaos. So they built in this powerful and pretty controversial mechanism. Think of it like a hidden emergency switch that could fundamentally transform the state. This switch is known as a state of emergency. It's a provision baked right into the Constitution that basically allows the normal rules to be suspended. During an emergency, the government gets extraordinary powers to deal with a severe threat, whether that's a war, a financial collapse, or an internal rebellion. The Constitution is very specific here. It outlines 3 distinct scenarios for this. There's a national emergency for huge threats like war, a state emergency, which you might have heard of as president's rule, where the central government can take direct control of a state, and finally, a financial emergency, just in case of an economic meltdown. And this is the most crucial point. When a national emergency is declared, that whole quasi-federal system we talked about can essentially become fully unitary. The strong central government becomes all-powerful, and even the enforcement of most of those fundamental rights, the core protections for every citizen, can be suspended. It is a massive, dramatic shift in the balance of power. Now, you might be thinking, wow, that is an immense amount of power. And you'd be right. This wasn't just a theoretical idea either. It was put to the test. Let's look at what happened when that switch was controversially flipped and how the system itself actually learned and responded.
In 1975, a national emergency was declared, and the reason given was this very vague term, internal disturbance. This led to a huge suspension of civil liberties and became a real crisis point in India's democracy. But in response, the system pushed back. The 44th Amendment in 1978 got rid of that vague phrase and replaced it with the much stricter armed rebellion, making it way harder to misuse. And later, the Supreme Court stepped in, ruling that it could review the use of President's Rule, adding another vital check on that power.
That whole experience led to some absolutely critical new guardrails being built into the system. The power to declare an emergency is no longer unchecked. Now, the judiciary can review it, and Parliament has to keep approving it. And most importantly, this is the big one, the fundamental rights to life and personal liberty can now never, ever be suspended, no matter what the crisis is. The system literally learned how to check its own most dangerous power.
And all of this brings us to a final and maybe the most crucial idea. The Indian Constitution was never meant to be a static relic, some dusty old book frozen in time. It was designed from the very beginning to be a living, breathing document. The proof is right here in this number. The Constitution has been amended over 106 times since 1950. Now, that's not a sign of weakness, far from it. It's a sign of its designed-in adaptability, its amazing ability to evolve right along with the nation it governs.
And that is our key takeaway. Every amendment, every court ruling, every single debate, it's all part of this constant negotiation. It's that balancing act we started with, the balance between the authority a state needs to govern and the fundamental liberties that individuals must have to be free.
So, we end with this thought. You have this document, written over 75 years ago, trying to govern a nation in the 21st century that's changing at lightning speed. So how does that balancing act continue today? Well, the grand experiment goes on.